Hi, I believe the word you're looking for is. Ah! Welcome to Hey Guys Podcast. I'm Rob, that's Liam, and this week I have a quiz for you. What do you get if you cross Pee Wee Herman, an asthmatic birdman, a woman with a penchant for leather and scratching, a man who loves to hear himself talk, and whose whole evil plan seems to be to steal electricity, and a man obsessed with rubber and bats? That's right. This week we watched Batman Returns, the sequel to what is now known as Batman 89. Deemed not as good as the original, and although a success at the box office, Batman Returns was considered a failure. But I argue that this is better than the original. This film feels more Batman, from the ridiculous gadgets to the iconic Batsuit, and what is arguably the best looking Batmobile in the cinematic run. Also, I must say, this has to be the darkest take on Penguin I think I've seen. You can just feel the sewer dripping off him. But now, saying all that, I think, Liam, you're still a Batman 89 fan, aren't you? Batman over Batman Returns?
Yeah, I am just about. I wonder sometimes how much that is nostalgia, because for me, Batman 89, and we mentioned it on the original podcast, obviously, it was one of the major movies of my youth. It was the first tentpole movie that I truly remember. And I didn't even get to go and see it in the cinema. My dad wouldn't take me for one reason or another, too busy at the pub, I guess. But what I do remember is there was a massive deal when it came out on VHS.
Yeah.
And to this day, I remember we went to Cardiff Video Centre. It was like one of the biggest video rental stores, I think, in the whole of the UK. It was absolutely massive. And one entire wall was just allocated just with Batman 89. And you can imagine like the VHS cover with the iconic bat symbol. I've walked in, I've seen those, and it's just like a really memorable moment. It was such a big deal. But saying that, going back and rewatching it now, I think Batman Returns is a more interesting film. I think I still prefer Batman 89 because it's just cool. Like Batman in Batman 89, and it comes from the very opening sequence, that I'm Batman, he's genuinely quite scary and threatening in that sequence, right through to that final hero shot with the Danny Elfman score kind of rising and him looking at the Batman. I'm just like, he's so cool in that film. He's not particularly cool in this film because everyone else, he's fucking weird. Weird in a brilliant way, but he's weird.
He is, and he can be deemed as a bumbling idiot. He seems to just be falling into solving all these crimes. Like he accidentally figures out who Selina Kyle is. The only reason he's able to prove Penguin is fucking everyone over is because he's able to record him because Penguin stole the Batmobile virtually.
Yeah. He
Like
does
he's
seem
not
to kind
doing.
of fall into a lot of problems.
Yeah,
But it's weird because Batman's not as cool. But I would argue that his Bruce Wayne has never been cooler. I forgot just how awesome Bruce Wayne is in this film. And when people think of like the chemistry in this film, and the chemistry with Batman and Catwoman is off the charts, but equally the chemistry between Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle might be even better. Like I would legitimately watch a 2-hour Mr. and Mrs. Smith style movie where they're both Catwoman and Batman. The other one doesn't realize, or they find out, but then they both pretend that they don't know, and they basically end up fighting each other. They even have like the Mr. and Mrs. Smith sex scene when they're having sex and they keep kind of, grabbing cuts from their previous encounters and stuff. I was like, those, I could totally watch just 2 hours of them doing that. And I think Michael Keaton is absolutely reveling in those sequences because it's almost like a really charming action comedy, romance story. And I think those are some of the quietly best bits of the film. And if anything, the stuff I'd kind of forgotten about.
I do think this is the better one over the two, only slightly. Now, I am with you. Batman 89 is cooler. But as I said in my intro, this one feels more Batman. Whether or not it's you get more villains, I guess. You get more of his rogues gallery. And then the action seems to be, although again ridiculous, more Batman style. Like he's fighting these over the top criminals. Like how the fuck all these people are able to just come from the sewer, I don't know. The Red Kite Gang, I think they're called. And we've got a working duckmobile, which
the Red Triangle Gang.
Red Triangle, the Red Kite, sorry. Red Triangle. You've got like I said, a penguin riding a duckmobile from the sewer that can grow is weird. They've all managed to like they got back. Nobody has ever just visited Gotham Zoo in a while, I'm guessing, because nobody knows where his hideout is.
Yeah.
It's completely ridiculous, but in such a good way.
Mhm.
I wanted to go back to before we
But-
go into like Batman.
No, but sorry, just while we're on the, just before we move on to something else, because I think you're onto a really interesting point there about the fact that it feels more Batman-y. I think it does feel more Batman, but at the same time feels infinitely more Tim Burton. Like Batman 89 is a Batman movie directed by Tim Burton and comes with all the trimmings. This, make no mistake, is a Tim Burton movie which stars the Batman and the Batman Rogues Gallery, and it comes with everything you would expect with that. This is one of like the weirdest superhero sequels I've ever seen in my life. And it's because he was given creative free rein.
He wasn't going to come back unless he had creative free rein. He fired the original writer they hired to do it, and then he got another writer to do rewrites on the writer he already hired. It was all, he got to hire who he wants then, because Burton actually directed Pee-wee's Playhouse, didn't he, or Pee-wee's Big Adventure?
Pee-wee's Big Adventure, yeah.
So he brings back Pee-wee. I'm doing him misjustice. I can't remember his
Paul
real name.
Rubens.
Paul Rubens.
Yeah, well, it was supposed to be.
Paul
It was
Rubens in.
originally supposed to be Burgess Meredith, who played the Penguin in the '60s version, but he wanted Paul Rubens in it. But that's what you end up with, like a weird. It's like a sexy film. It's emotionally internal and intellectually dark. It's this really odd film. And to bring it back to your original point, it's one that puts, like, it doesn't often make sense. It's
Trust me, I've got some things to bring up about it not making sense.
Well, yeah, it's like it never gets caught up into the details. It's world building at its very best, but it is like the very best example of style over substance. Like, why does Selena Kyle become Catwoman? Like, there's zero explanation for it
because a couple of cats licked her after she fell 40 stories, I guess.
Yeah, she owns cats, so no problem. Let's get going. There's stuff like, how big is the sewer at the start? How did she become Catwoman, as I mentioned? The Wayne Manor being covered in bat signals makes no fucking sense.
That's my first note. How far out does Batman have to live for nobody to notice his own bat signals in his courtyard?
It's crazy. Well, apparently, because, don't get me wrong, this film is gorgeous, and we will talk about the art design soon, but everybody apparently lives in Gotham Square. It's like this film is huge and small at the same time because it feels so set-based. But the circus folk down in the sewer, we did mention earlier, the Red Triangle Gang, there's no reason for them really to be there other than that they're aesthetically interesting. The whole thing's kind of underplayed, but I get it. They're just about forced into the story. The Penguin's office, like, do they create it to become purposefully decrepit, where he comes downstairs and everything else is perfect? That's insane. The Battle Ride is, and to bring it back to that point again about being mega Batman, that feels so 60s Batman. It feels like it came
Which one,
right.
sorry?
You know when he's got control of the Batmobile later in the film?
Yes,
and
the
he's
Battle Ride,
Battle Ride, sorry. That feels like something directly out of the, there are a few moments in this film where you're like, this is, you know, because when 89 came out, it seems a little bit twee now, but at the time, everyone's like, oh, this is this mega dark interpretation of Batman based on, like, you know, closer to the, is it Frank Miller comics?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Frank Miller, yeah.
Of course, you go back now, and especially given the Batman movies that have come since, it doesn't feel particularly dark at all. But this film, a lot of people claimed it to be excessively dark at the time. I would actually argue at times it's relatively goofy. I mean, it's got mind-controlled penguins. There's no explanation for how he has mind-controlled penguins whatsoever. And even like some of the action sequences, you know, the famous rooftop face lick scene with Batman and Catwoman. And we'll go into the finer details of that in a moment. But you notice they have that scene because the cops shoot Batman. He falls over the edge and just slides down a little roof. Then he and Catwoman have this whole tete-a-tete, which goes on for ages. What happens to the cops?
With the coppers, yeah.
Nobody fucking cares, because it doesn't matter to Tim Burton. He just doesn't give a fuck.
Sticking to your not making sense scene, right? This is where I wanted to move on to next.
Mm-hmm.
When I did my intro, you pulled a face that nobody else is going to see, obviously. When I said about Max Shrek's whole plan is to steal electricity.
Yeah.
Like, that's what's like his whole plan is to create a power plant that isn't a power plant. It's actually siphoning electricity.
It's basically his plan. One, it doesn't really make sense. Two, more importantly, it doesn't matter. Basically, they've looked at the story and they said, we need somebody who's going to work with the Penguin to bring him into power. So they just needed somebody who was, I don't know, maybe empower themselves, corrupt to a certain extent, that they would be willing to work with the Penguin, because that's the real story. And then maybe just by accident, they suddenly found out, it's like, wait a minute, we've cast Christopher Walken as Max Schreck, and he's absolutely slaying it. Like every line delivery as you get, it's like, she tries to bribe me, I'll throw out of a higher window. It's just like, hey, like that could be a throwaway line, but because it's Christopher Walken, like, fuck, man, we need more Christopher. Like, there's one scene with Christopher Walken, Batman, I was going to say Bruce Wayne, and Selena Kyle in the boardroom together.
Yeah.
And it's just, it could have been a nothing scene, and it's absolute gold between the writing, the delivery, the chemistry between the three characters. Again, my big issue with Batman Returns when I was younger, and it still kind of remains, is that there are too many characters. But it's like, what are you going to do? Get rid of Max Schreck? You can't. He's too goddamn good.
What I love is when he's out in public and everything he's doing, and he's giving the finger signs to everybody. Like the peace sign. Yeah. Everything was about that, and it is one of those things, isn't it? He feels like very Elon Musk.
Somewhere between Elon Musk and Donald Trump sits Max Schreck. Yeah, I think so.
It's absolute. That's
the thing.
So good though. Christopher Walken is so good.
He's fantastic, and that's the problem. Like, he could be a minor character. And he does disappear, admittedly, for like half the film, before being forced kind of somewhat unceremoniously back in towards the end of the film. But because he's so good, you can't imagine the movie without it. It's like the biggest problem with a lot of superhero sequels is that they have too many characters. You think back, the Spider-Man movies were especially, like Spider-Man 3, and then Amazing Spider-Man 2 was ruined by just having too many characters. And in this, you've got Max Schreck, you've got Oswald Cobblepot, you've got Selena Kyle, and they put a big emphasis on Bruce Wayne and Batman in this film. And you're like, theoretically, for a 2-hour film, one of them should probably go. But like we said, I'm not going to make that decision because they're all too goddamn good. So yeah, I get it. It's a slightly messy film, and I think leads to my problem with Batman Returns was always that this is a weird thing to say about a film I genuinely love, but it's not greater than the sum of its individual parts, because especially watching it in a more kind of critical way, I maybe appreciated it more than I ever have before. That was probably the most fun I've ever had watching Batman Returns. Yeah. But at the end of it, I'm like, it's not quite the movie, because the sum of its, all the individual parts are so good that this should be one of the best movies I've ever seen. And for me, at least, it doesn't quite reach that level. Maybe if it was like 2.5 hours long, I don't know. But it's a very good film, but not quite as good as I wanted it to be.
I tell you who they could have got rid of was Chip.
Dude, I've got that exact note. It's like, why the fuck is Chip in this film?
Like, the guy who plays Chip as well, I think his name is Andrew Sazowski. Andrew Briniarski. I know him from a few things, but the one thing I know him from, we're going to do it sooner or later. He plays Kit Kat in Hudson Hawk.
Oh, Jesus Christ, Hudson fucking Hawk again.
Hudson Hawk. And
I'm actually, you've walked me down on this now. I'm legit, like, it's been so long. All right, I really disliked Hudson Hawk when I watched it, but admittedly, I watched Hudson Hawk probably in 1997. I've not seen it since, and now you've mentioned so many times, I'm like, I kind of want to watch Hudson Hawk. Maybe it's ones I'll go back. No, because I felt a similar way. I knew it was slightly better, but like The Rocketeer, and I enjoyed it more going back to it. So maybe Hudson Hawk's the new Rocketeer. We'll see.
Oh, mate, you're not going to like Hudson Hawk, but you could have got rid of Chip, because Chip was absolutely pointless. Another one I noticed, the tattooed strongman.
The tattoo.
Do you know the one
yeah.
The TNT, the very, very Acme bomb shoved into his trousers.
Rick Zumwalt from Over the Top, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, I never noticed it before. I literally like, wait, I fucking know that dude. And the other one was Roach from People Under the Stairs, is the kid selling the papers.
Yes, and the organ grinder as well, Vincent Schiavelli. He's been in like loads of things, randomly, like Fast Times at Ridgemont High. But I remember him as the angry ghost with the massive head, massive forehead from Ghost.
From Ghost, yeah. He's the guy on the train who teaches him how to like do ghost shit, doesn't he?
Yeah.
But that brings it back to one of the more interesting points of this film. Because obviously, when you direct it or you're looking back at a Batman movie, it comes with a bunch of baggage because you've got all these other Batman films. And one thing that what's his name? Snyder got absolutely slaughtered on Batman versus Superman was the fact that Batman apparently kills. In case you hadn't noticed, Batman 100% kills at least 2 people in this film, without question.
There's no way Rick Zumwalt, as we said, tattooed strongman, is getting away from having his dick blown off. But
No, he's blown up for sure. And the fire-breathing dude that Batman sets on fire with his Batmobile, he's not surviving that.
Why did the fire-breathing dude wait then?
Yeah, it just slowly turns around. It's, again, one of the elements of this film. It's wonderfully over-designed. Like,
Yeah.
again, and it comes back to the whole, like, common sense be damned. The whole thing with the Batmobile turns around is a perfect example of something, an idea being over-designed, not making any sense, but Tim Burton just going, let's just go for it. And sorry, I'm going to shift on some, just while I have that in mind. What I always think is interesting, going back and watching Batman movies, is that they are without question the most auteurish of all the comic book movies. Like, maybe the most so is Tim Burton, and especially with this film where it feels so specifically Tim Burton. But you think of, like, there are so many modern superhero movies that just, especially nowadays, feel like Marvel movies. A lot of them, of course, being Marvel movies. But it's the same as the Sony ones, and even the more recent DC ones. They just feel like Marvel clones. Like, there's little in the way of a directorial, like, stamp or statement to many of those films. But with Batman, whether it be Burton, Schumacher, whatever you think of Schumacher, he's got a distinctive style. Nolan, Snyder, and Matt Reeves, each Batman has his own distinct visual and tonal styling, which I think is completely, like, if you watch the Spider-Man movies, the only one that really stands out is Sam Raimi, and Sam Raimi is maybe the closest we've got to a director outside of the Batman movies that's doing something visually unique and auteurish, I suppose. Those feel like Sam Raimi movies. Whereas with the Batman films, like the Matt Reeves film, you can argue it feels like a Fincher movie more than a Matt Reeves film, but you get my gist. But like the Tim Burton might be the king of this, but yeah, each and every Batman film feels so distinct, right down to, as I said, the recent Matt Reeves Batman movie. Although I have to ask, just what it isn't about Batman Returns. Did you like the Batman?
Matt Reeves one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really liked it.
I thought it was too long. Then I thought the extra ending didn't need to happen. Like,
absolutely, it was. Maybe because it was 3 hours long. I watched it. I really enjoyed it, but I found it oddly forgettable. Despite the fact that I really like Patterson, I've not felt compelled to go back and rewatch it. And one of the problems is, and we'll bring it back to Batman Returns, is Batman movies, other than maybe Batman '89. As great as many of them are, they all have a problem with finales. Like Matt Reeves' Batman, the worst part of that film is the final act. The worst part of this film is the final act doesn't really land for me. And even The Dark Knight, which is this absolutely beloved superhero film, people forget the last act of that film isn't brilliant. It's not. The only one I would say that maybe sticks the landing actually is Batman '89. That's got I do like the stuff with the Joker.
I was going to argue for stuff. I was going to argue for Batman Returns, but we will get to why there's a problem with this ending. But you've brought up, now, not talking about Batman Returns again, because you brought up a question for me. You've mentioned all the directors of Batman films. So cinematically, not the best Batman, because we could argue all day and you'd be wrong, but the best.
Sorry, now I have to know who your favorite Batman is. We'll get to it in a minute.
The best Batman look on screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. For you, who is the suit, the aesthetic, the look, the best
for
Batman?
me, it is, and maybe it is because I've got that attachment to it. It is Tim Burton's Batman. And it's Michael Keaton. And it's because I love the suit, but it's not just the suit. It comes with the car, which, as you mentioned earlier, is far, like, don't get me wrong, the Tumbler's great. But nothing.
The Tumbler's fantastic. The Tumbler looks at, but the most iconic for me, the '89 and this one, obviously, the Batmobile, the Tim Burton Batmobile is quite possibly the best looking cinematic car.
Oh, yeah, not even Batman car. I put an argument for that, but it all comes back to the Tim Burton element of it and the aesthetic, which he's arguably created the most timeless superhero aesthetic of all time. This retro-futurism and this kind of Art Deco Gothic design means that you go back and watch this film and it's just like, when was this made? When is it set? I don't know. It's just Batman. That's it.
So for me, mine is random because I absolutely hated the film, but it's Batfleck's Batman in The Flash. I love that grey blue suit. It feels so Batman Returns from the
we are going to disagree. I love it. Fucking hated that. I was like, how have they taken what I would argue, like, because the one that is close for me is I love the Frank Miller inspired Batfleck suit from Batman versus Superman. Love the grey suit. He looks like this big hulking thing. It's a very different vibe to this, but I love the aesthetic. And me saying that I love the Michael Keaton version, the Tim Burton version, that's not like, I love the Matt Reeves look. I love the Nolan look with Christian Bale. And I very particularly love the look of Ben Affleck in that classic suit. I hated the suit that they did for the Flash, which is weird because our views on the Flash are completely opposite. You like Ben Affleck in it. You like the Batsuit. Really didn't like that, but then I kind of like the rest of the movie. I think Michael Keaton's actually really good in that film. But yeah, we'll get to that in Legacy anyway. But
friends that have a podcast when we seem to agree on anything.
Well, it's just one of those things. We've said it a bunch of times. We either completely agree or 100% disagree, apparently. So yeah, it's always an interesting one. But yeah, I just think it's like, it's not just, as I said, it's the car, it's the aesthetic, and it's the score, the Danny Elfman score. To this day, I still think when people think of Batman, you hear in your head, bum, 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 bum. You know, they used it for Lego Batman, didn't they? They could have used any theme. And that is one thing that not only Batman, but DC absolutely walks all over Marvel. Like, whatever you say, right, the Marvel films are, well, they're not all great, but they were very good for a number of years. I tell you what, their theme tunes are garbage. Like, other than, the only one that sticks in my head is the Avengers main theme. That is it. When you think of like, Batman,
to be fair, I can't think of any of the Avengers ones off the top of my head now. I really can't.
That's all I can think of.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. For the DC side of it, especially older DC films, they seem to be more iconic.
Well, if you look at Batman and Superman are the two big ones, I would argue that they've both got two each absolutely iconic scores. So Superman, you've obviously got the amazing Williams original. I would argue that the Zimmer version for Man of Steel runs it super close, in so much that it's a completely different vibe for a different kind of movie, but they're both fantastic in their own way. In the same way, I would prefer the Danny Elfman version for Batman 89 and Batman Returns. But the Nolan score, which was Zimmer again, absolutely amazing. And you've got these you've got four scores between two characters that are much more memorable than anything on the Marvel side. And I think that plays a big part. I always think like how the first movie, bringing it back to Batman 89, got me from minute one when the score came in and it was like you didn't know what you were looking at. And it was like the bat symbol, but you were like traveling through it. And then it kind of cuts out and went, dude, Batman 89 is the better film. Like that opening sequence.
This is the Batman Returns podcast.
With the Batman symbol and then the stuff on the rooftop. But no, let's not take away from the fact that this is still a gorgeous looking film. Sorry.
So, no, I'm agreeing with you. It is absolutely gorgeous. And I think you said it makes no sense. There's a lot of it that makes no sense. All Catwoman does in this film is fall.
Yeah.
I noticed. I've never noticed it until this rewatching. She falls from it or gets pushed from a big height. Big height? Yeah, that'll do. She gets from a height at least 4 times.
Yeah, there's a lot of, and it does bring it back to the whole thing about it's aesthetically amazing. Like, Anton Furst, who created the amazing set design for the first film, died before they actually started this film, died in 91. But that aesthetic combined with Tim Burton's kind of, visual concept combined to create this amazing Gotham. And I think they may have even elevated it for Batman Returns. And a big part of that is, and the reason we're doing this podcast now, is the Christmas aesthetic, which is kind of, stamped on top. Like, no city looks better at Christmas than Gotham, whether it be in the comic books, the video games, and very specifically in this movie. And it's like, the city doesn't make any sense. As you say, it's a Catwoman who just falls off things. People just disappear. It's an oddly giant and small city at the same time. But it doesn't matter because all Tim Burton's interested in is getting that aesthetic across and basically just getting back to the characters. Like, he almost doesn't give a shit about the plot. He just wants to get inside the head of Batman, of Catwoman, Selena Kyle, and the Penguin. And that's what this film is really about, is getting into the heads of these really weird characters.
It's that really weird, creepy love triangle. Absolutely. Because like you said, they seem to forget about everything else. There was the scene that made me laugh. When they want to reintroduce Penguin or Oswald Cobblepot into the world, they steal the mayor's baby. Yeah. Nobody seems to be that upset that the mayor's baby was taken because the guy took the kid nobody ran bum rushed him. He was able to actually then give a little bit of a press conference.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, he jumped over people,
Hmm.
jumped down the sewer. Nobody's following him. They're
Hmm.
just all of a sudden crowded by people taking pictures.
Well,
And then
that's one of. Sorry, Karen.
and then Penguin's able to rise up in his duckmobile.
Well, it's one of the scenes actually, which, if anything, really highlighted to me rewatching it the difference between Batman 89 and Batman Returns, and that additional level of control that Tim Burton had, where he pushes that element of staginess that step further. Like the first film is stagey, but the comparable scene to that in the first film is when Joker shows up at a press conference outside Gotham City Hall and says, the pen truly is mightier than the sword, and throws the pen into the guy's neck. If you go and rewatch that sequence, it feels much more naturalistic. It feels like it belongs in the world. Like you said, that sequence with the Penguin, it feels like you're watching a stage play. It's a wonderful stage play, but it shows a very clear difference between the slight control that Warner Brothers had over Tim Burton with the first film, and the fact that somebody's just let him off the leash and just said, just make a Tim Burton film, make what you want to make. And that's what you come up with.
In regards to this, to the story as well, does nobody question Max Schreck when his entire staff and partners seem to keep going on extended vacations to they don't know where?
Yeah.
But I love it as well because you know he knows they're dead. From the look on his face, I don't know the guy's name. When Penguin says, "Oh, what about your partner, John?" and he goes, "Oh, John, yeah, John. Who's John? Oh, yeah, John. Like you know who your partner is, dude. He was your partner."
Yeah.
And oh, I believe he's on an extended vacation. And he pulls out his remarkably good preserved hand.
Yeah. Preserved it. Well, I guess the whole point is the sewer is supposed to be basically freezing cold, isn't it? So that's the kind of thing that the hand was remained frozen. Although the one thing I will say for Max Schreck, while I do think he overacted, Selena Kyle did overreach massively. Like, I'm not talking about the boardroom sequence when she wants to give her idea and she gets mansplained and talked out of the room. That's horrible. But she then logs into his personal computer by guessing his password and then just sitting there and going, oh, well, so I looked through all your secret files and, well, this is a little bit fishy. I'm like, he probably shouldn't have killed her. However, I mean, if ever there was kind of like, she should have at least been fired. What the fuck was she thinking?
It was a bit of a piss take, mind. I agree with you. She shouldn't have done it. But come on, if you're going to have your password as your dead dog who is enshrined next to you,
yeah, no,
you deserve to be hacked.
Yeah. If someone's trying to hack you and you get hacked, fair enough. If your secretary or executive assistant just decides, I'm going to have a crack at this, even if she is successful because of your oversight, even right, say you left it on the desk and it says, this is my password. She works for him. She shouldn't just be logging in anyway. So yeah, on his part, he's a dumbass. But my God, Selena Kyle, what the fuck were you thinking? What were you? And she clearly knows how dangerous he is. But that's not going to take away from the fact that, oh my God, Michelle Pfeiffer in this film. Oh my days.
Oh yeah, she is smoking. He did. He did such good Christopher Walken as well. When he's pushing it towards the window, and then he goes,
"Oh, that was great."
And she's going, "Oh, I thought you were gonna." Yeah,
and it's I tell you what, it's an absolutely fantastic falling scene where the camera's right up in her face and screaming, and then she falls through all the like parasols,
Shrek awnings.
Yeah, awnings. Sorry, and she's boom, 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 and then she's on the floor. It's just like, God damn, that just looked amazing. Because that's one of the things with Batman '89. The Joker drop doesn't look great. Like, the high watermark, not just for the 80s, but to this day, obviously, is still Die Hard. And, you've just watched Die Hard and you know what's capable in the 80s. And then you watched Jack Nicholson falling off the roof. And of course, are you going to get Jack Nicholson in the same situation? Absolutely not. You tell you to go fuck yourself. But it doesn't look great. Whereas the scene in this film, while not quite at the Die Hard level, is really, really good, especially for a film that came out in 1992.
I do love as well. Let's go to Michelle Pfeiffer, right? So you did hint that you did hint that there's no reason that she became Catwoman, but
all you find out is like, yeah, we all know cats are assholes, so they don't even wait for you to die. They come over and go, I think she might be dead. Let's start eating her. But that shouldn't give her magic powers because that's what she has.
Also, she has supernatural powers because she should have died several times.
Well, yeah. So she's got 9 lives like a cat. She suddenly knows, let's be clear, kung fu for no apparent reason. And
how to use a whip.
Yeah, that just comes, she didn't know it before. She doesn't learn it. She just knows it.
Sorry, and she's acrobatic as fuck.
Yeah, she's got magic powers. Like, make no mistake, it doesn't get played up in the film, but the moment you stop and think about it, it's like, why did she die and come back with magic powers? No fucking reason. It's
So
just, but again, it doesn't matter, which is great. I love the fact that they didn't explain it because the fall looked amazing. Her laying dead in the snow and the cats coming and nibble on her hands and the whole, like, her eyes going is amazing. And yeah, I don't need an explanation. I want to see the scene, and it's one of the best scenes in the film when she goes back to her twee flat and just loses her fucking, like, the opening sequence is almost like she's a zombie because when she goes in, she's like repeating what she did before. Honey,
yeah,
I'm home, and she goes and does all the same things, and then she's just like, what the fuck? Just smashes the place up. But there's something, and basically any scene with Michelle Pfeiffer, and I'm not saying this in a pervy way, I'm just, every single sequence is sexy. Even when she's smashing the place up, you're like, why is this so goddamn sexy? It just
you couldn't
is.
have been more as pervy as Danny DeVito was Penguin in this.
Well, yeah, we'll have to finish talking about Catwoman and then get.
Okay,
Well, not
so
only,
let's
there's
go
two
into.
things
So
about
what I
the
wanted to
Penguin,
mention about
yeah.
what I wanted to mention about Catwoman was
Mm-hmm.
I love the fact as well she makes her own, like she's got her own seamstress station and she's got enough
Mm-hmm.
out of the leather trousers, I think, to make a whole leather outfit.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and she already has 10 of those weird sewing finger pick
There's,
things.
there's not enough material on the coat. She shouldn't have all those pick things. But it's like, again, the answer repeatedly is who gives a fuck. And the
Are they
important thing is,
staples as well? Are they staples all over?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like. But the suit just looks, aesthetically, it looks amazing. But so much of it comes down to, and again, this is, I would say, one of the best cast superhero films of all time. Like, Michael Keaton's fantastic Batman. Obviously, Christopher Walken's Max Shrek. Danny DeVito's Penguin couldn't be more perfect. But equally, Michelle Pfeiffer, who might have the most perfect set of lips. I mean, like she just has these amazing. She's just got amazing features.
Better than Peter Weller's.
I was thinking about that when I was saying it. well, that's the thing, though. If you're a superhero, and it's the reason that, like, Michael Keaton, he's not the most handsome guy in the world, but he's got a really interesting jawline and lips. So when he puts on the bat suit, it's got that distinctive thing. And it sounds like a weird example, but RoboCop 1 and 2 to RoboCop 3 is only when you put another guy in the RoboCop suit who doesn't have Peter Weller's mouth. You're suddenly like, it just doesn't work. You need someone, and it's the same with Selena Kyle. Of course, she's gorgeous, but you couldn't just stick a beautiful woman in the catsuit and magic happens. It's like there's something specific about Michelle Pfeiffer. And the performance, both as Selena Kyle pre-death, obviously there's Catwoman, and that's what everyone remembers, obviously. But she is so goddamn good as Selena Kyle, and again, it's specifically in those sequences with Bruce Wayne, because obviously Vicky Vale does get a mention, but Vicky Vale in the first film, I think she's the perfect follow-up, actually, because Vicky Vale was a relationship between Bruce Wayne and Vicky Vale, and him just trying to have this life outside of Batman. This is, even though it's Bruce Wayne you're seeing, this is Batman's relationship with Catwoman, and then that obviously kind of breaking into the other side of his life, and it comes all the weirdness that ensues with it. But the sequence at the ball in particular, where, like you said, yes, Bruce Wayne is an idiot. How have you not already figured out that she's Catwoman? I mean, for fuck's sake. But when they do have that realization, and she's like, oh no, do we have to go outside and fight now? It's all that stuff is absolute gold. But yeah, so much of it comes down to the fact that in a movie that is perfectly cast, I still think that Michelle Pfeiffer probably just about steals the show.
She is the standout in this, absolutely. Although I do think that Danny DeVito's having the time of his life. Let's move on to the Penguin.
Yeah, just one thing I'll say. One last thing on Michelle Pfeiffer is, we mentioned it briefly earlier, the rooftop sequence is, everyone remembers obviously like the upside down kiss from like Spider-Man. The sexiest scene without question is when she mounts Batman, she licks his face, and it's not just the licking his face, it's the way he licks his lips afterwards and bites his own lip. It's so bizarrely erotic. I'm just like, that's not happening in a film nowadays. But yeah. They get away with it because it's a weird film. But yeah, the Penguin, dude, Jesus Christ.
So I just don't. So he's meant to be some sort of feral mutated thing. I get that. And they already had, from what I can gather, his parents already had a jail cage crib ready for him before he was born.
Yeah. Apparently so.
And then they dump him in the weirdest river. That's a stream, not a river. but he's able to float away, and penguins find him.
Apparently, there's a bunch of penguins. Yeah, of course.
And then they take him under the sewer, but he doesn't. They hinted it, don't they? He doesn't live under the sewer forever. He then joins a circus, which is how he has the Red Triangle Gang, I guess.
Which is the element of the film which I think really suffers from there being so many characters. All that stuff feels massively underplayed.
Yeah. And then they come back then, and he's in the sewer where Max Shrek's toxic waste is going.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, and then when they decide that he wants to become, or Max Shrek wants him to become mayor,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to figure out, has he always been this lecherous, or does he realize that there are women out there that he could have power over?
He's so unbelievably lecherous. As you say, it's a disturbing representation of character, because we are invited almost to laugh at it. And again, it brings it back to that idea about the fact that it's this really dark film, but it's almost like so extreme, so exaggerated that it kind of comes out the other side. And that's why I think it just about gets away with it. But his character walks line because, one, he's so gross. Like, Danny DeVito is so wonderfully uncomfortable in his own skin. Like, he's always making he's always making noises. You've got the oil stuff coming out of his mouth. His bodysuit is so disturbing.
It's so gross, especially when he's in his like onesie underwear
dude, that's
thing.
The worst.
And he's got a wedgie. But do you know the only comparison I could, when I was watching the Penguin in this film, and he's just the way he's acting, the things he's saying about the women and things like that, and the whole have a button, let's make sure it's stuck on thing, is obviously
so rapey, dude.
Yeah, I'm assuming he's still a virgin at this point, and he's just overcompensated because he's a 45-year-old, unless he has gone down the rape vibe. We don't know. I mean, it's the Penguin.
Yeah, we don't need to go there. Yeah.
No, I'm not going there. But the only comparison that I had was he reminded me of Jay from The Inbetweeners.
Yeah, a little bit. No, I totally get that. I get it. It's so weird because, like you say, he's so aggressively gross, and he's like really it's not just he's aggressive with women. It's like when Catwoman's back at his weird office and she puts her foot on his chest and he like sniffs her foot. I'm just like, dude, the levels of filth. And like you said, like when people again talk about this film being so dark, it does go to some really dark places, especially on a thematic level. And like we're doing now, when you start thinking about it and talking about it, like, dude, this film's really fucked up. But there is that purposeful artifice which allows it to get away with it. And I think that comes back to Tim Burton's design. Like, all of his movies have this purposeful artifice, which acts as like a barrier between our world and that world. This, it's all very created. It doesn't belong in the real world. It's this complete fantasy land, which allows them to get away with this. Because I think if you had like the same, say if the Penguin was the same in Matt Reeves' Batman, you'd be like, Jesus Christ, this really is like fucking Seven. It would just be too dark. But he gets away with it. And because, again, Danny DeVito, despite how gross he is oddly charming as the Penguin. Like, what's the word I'm looking for? This, you're supposed to feel bad for them by the end. There's a word for it. I can't think of it. It doesn't matter. But sympathetic.
Well, sympathetic, yeah.
Yeah, like by the end, he is almost played out as this kind of sympathetic villain, especially when the penguins kind of walk him off to his death and, you see him in the suit. But you look back at the film and you go, I don't know, man, he's a little bit too gross to be sympathetic. The fact that Danny DeVito somehow almost gets away with it, speaks volumes to his performance.
When he turns on Catwoman and he happens to have, and I love it because he's always got the right umbrella for the right situation.
Until the very end, of course.
Until the very end. Yeah. But he happens to have the helicopter umbrella to wrap around the neck and send her off. He is, I don't know, one film rating away from calling her a cock tease and not a sultry minx or whatever he calls her.
That's exactly, he actually says, you sent out all the signals. I'm just like, oh, dude. He needs a Me Too moment. You sent out all the signals. Like, when these guys like, oh, she wore a short skirt. I'm like, God damn, man. I mean, that line is one of the perfect examples of one of the lines that is no fucking way making it into a mainstream Batman movie in 2023. Forget about it.
It's her fault apparently because she dressed up in leather. In public.
And she is like, she is a flirt for sure, but she can't be saying that. But then that shouldn't, like, I always thought the worst thing about the Penguin was the fact that he is a complete sleazebag. And it was almost like I blocked out of my mind just how fucked up. His plan at the end of the film.
Yes.
It's unbelievable. It's so dark. It's biblically dark.
It's one of those as a father moments, right?
Oh, dude.
When his minions were taking the kids and they're crying and they're putting them in the cages, dude, I was like, oh no.
The only way they get away with it is because Batman foils the plan so quickly. But even one of his goons actually says, it's like, oh, Penguin, do you not think, he ends up shooting him, but he's like, even he's like, dude, this is pretty dark. And
that poor goon, do you know who that was?
No.
So he was actually one of the bouncers from Roadhouse. Obviously, you know which bouncer he was in Roadhouse.
Yes, I know which. Exactly.
Yeah.
Not the other one. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, though. Like, that plan to basically take away and kill the firstborn of all of Gotham's children, as I said, biblically dark. When that plan gets quashed by Batman, his follow-up plan is, we're just going to kill all the babies. All the babies. Like, what the fuck, dude? How quickly this elevated into, like, just pure monstrosity.
We're going to release the Penguins. Also, I want to know who in the Red Triangle gang is the tech genius. Somebody was able to hack the Batmobile from some blueprints. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. So you can hack the Batmobile, that's fine. Then you can connect it virtually to, what did you call it? The Battle Ride?
Battle Ride.
So that's fine. Then they're able to connect Penguins to what I can only assume are, well, I know they're rockets, but like, I didn't think they were nuclear rockets or anything like that.
No, they're just rockets. But also, make no mistake, these Penguins are mind controlled, apparently. Yeah. Who the fuck's doing this? Again, no explanation. They've just got these absolute tech geniuses at the circus, apparently.
When did they get as well his Sigourney Weaver-esque person from Galaxy Quest who just quotes the computer? Like that random woman in the...
Really odd, yes. The Penguins are reaching Gotham Square. She basically, what it reminded me of, actually, is the voiceover guy from Austin Powers, who does like the, 10, 9, just does all that. Like, it's a really odd sequence. And again, it's one of those moments which is much closer to the 60s Batman show than it is to like Frank Miller and stuff. And again, this whole idea that it's a thematically dark film, but I watch this film and it doesn't feel like, especially if you compare it to modern Batman films, like the Snyder Batman and specifically Matt Reeves, those are dark Batman films. Batman Returns, by comparison now, feels almost, despite the sexual kind of abuse, I suppose, feels a little bit twee.
It's campy, isn't it? It goes
towards... It is borderline campy, yeah.
I had to ask, right? Because it just made me think with the Batman and all the gadgets and stuff. How was Batman able to run around on those rooftops when he had what I can only describe as a very heavy glider under his wing, under his cape?
The thing is, he actually uses it again in The Flash.
Yeah.
But they do a better job of making it look like an organic part of the suit. But obviously back then, there's no CG. They just had to tape it to his back. So yes, it does look incredibly clumsy in this film, sadly. But that's the thing, though. It comes back to the fact that it looks cool, and that's all that matters in this film. It's like, if it looks cool and it gives us another sequence with basically get Michael Keaton and Michelle Pfeiffer on screen as much as possible. But like you said, the chemistry, I love the scenes with Michael Keaton and Max Schreck, and obviously the stuff with the Penguin's good as well. But I come out of this film, I'm like, my God, I wish there had been that spin-off, or maybe a better version of this film is where you almost like forego the additional characters and just have it just be Batman and Catwoman and just have them having their back and forth, which again, I think just brings it back to my idea about the whole Mr. and Mrs. Smith Batman and Catwoman style, because their chemistry is absolutely
they would absolutely need a third.
That is the problem, yeah. Because the whole thing about her being you need somebody to kind of push her towards the dark side and him bring her back.
Anti-heroish thing. I know we need to move on. Before we do, I just wanted to bring up one more thing. Max Schreck at the end, where he's able to get the gun from the guy at the bottom and he shoots Batman and then he shoots Selina and then she electrocutes him. When they find his corpse at the end, his electrocuted corpse looks remarkably like Marv from Home Alone 2 after he's gone through after he's been fucked up. Like
Yeah,
when
yeah.
when he's covered in paint and his hair's on end and everything,
And he
he
gets
looks
electrocuted.
electric.
They have a scene like that, totally. But
Yeah.
that's the thing. Before we move on, we do have to talk about the finale because, as I said,
Oh, the
it's
finale. Yeah.
it's an interesting thing with Batman films because I know we criticize the Matt Reeves one, but I think like this film, on a thematic level, it's a really strong finale. Like it does wrap up the thematic interest of the movie quite nicely towards the end of the film. But it's so obsessed, like, and I think it was the same with the Matt Reeves one, with capturing the thematics that it just it just didn't work on it. Like it wasn't the most fun finale. That's
No.
my big
So
issue.
I think it needed the scene in the sewer between
Yeah,
Catwoman,
yeah.
Max Shrek, and Penguin. Like physically, Penguin is no match for Batman. So
Mhm.
you can see in this film as well, he got taken out pretty quickly, and like he died in his own right. But you did not need the Penguin Army scene just to introduce another weird Batmobile that's able to hover in the sewers.
Well, that's one of my big issues, and we'll get to this in Love and Hate, is that as great and as iconic as the Batmobile and the Batwing is, nobody talks about the Batwing because obviously
Yeah.
everyone remembers the Batmobile. The Batwing is amazing in Batman '89. This Bat boat, I guess that's what we're going to call it, or a
Hovercraft,
sewer,
it's not even in the water, so it's a hovercraft ish.
maybe whatever it is. It doesn't, it falls flat. It like again, it feels like it's designed for this very, in that again, Batman 60s style, like shark repellent spray. It was built specifically for this situation,
Yeah.
and it just didn't really land for me. So, like I said, we'll get to our issues with the film in a minute anyway, with loves and hates. But should we move on to favorite scene?
Yeah, go for it.
For me, there's a few options. I mentioned earlier the Michelle Pfeiffer apartment when actually comes back to life. Like the score in that sequence too is absolutely amazing. But the one for me and the most iconic moment in the film is the meow when she walks out and it's like Batman and the Penguin are together, and she just walks over and like she flips over, and they're like, "Who the fuck's this?" And meow. She does it in that sultry way, and then the building explodes in the background. I was like, "It's got to." There had to be an influence on Nolan when he did the Joker sequence with the what was it? It wasn't a prison; it was a hospital. When he walks out and he's pressing the button, that was iconic in a different way. But yeah, the way she flips out and just says meow and the building blows up in the background, fuck me, what a great scene. So that's my favorite.
It's mine as well.
Yeah, it's the best one.
Yeah, it's absolutely good, but it looks great. But I do love basically Penguin just calling dibs.
Yeah,
I saw
her first. Yeah, just a dirty bastard from start to finish. He is such a dirty boy in this film, and that is one of the things I knew he was lecherous, but going back and watch it, I was like, Jesus, was he always this much of a dirty bastard? It's unbelievable. But yeah, that's the best scene. In terms of loves, number one, the whole cast. I'm not picking out. I could easily pick out Michelle Pfeiffer, obviously, but that it really is. I love Michael Keaton. I love Christopher Walken. I love Danny DeVito. Get rid of Chip, obviously, and I love Michelle Pfeiffer. That timeless aesthetic established by Burton and Anton first in the first movie, and it really is elaborated and improved upon here to create what I think is actually the best looking Batman movie. I think you could make an argument for it. Number three, I could probably say the cast again, couldn't I? But if not, well, not perfect. The script allows a movie with like so many of the key characters to work. I mentioned the fact that this film could have fallen flat in its face because it has so many characters. But I think by the script being so tight, and even Michael Keaton who got involved, who looked over the original script and said Batman should talk less. And I know that sounds like a ridiculous note, but even the scriptwriter came back and said it was a fantastic choice. It's like pare everything back so you can just keep the emphasis on the characters. And I think that's one of the best things about the film as well. And one of the reasons I said this film really could have been messy, but it just doesn't feel that way.
Yeah. Is that your three?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah. So for me, I'll give you the core cast as well, but including Michael Gough as Alfred. We haven't really mentioned him, but
he's really good. But he's like this kind of staple across like 5 movies, isn't he?
He's gone. Yeah, he went right up until Batman and Robin, didn't he? So he's bless him. He's suffered enough.
Yeah, he really has. Yeah.
I'll give you the core cast, including him. Secondly, the Batmobile.
Oh yeah, it's a great show. Yeah.
Well, the Batmobile up to a point because I do have a hate, but we'll cover that in hate. I absolutely love the Batmobile. And finally, I gotta say, you've mentioned the design, and we mentioned design a lot, and you said it's stuck within the
Gotham Central Square,
Gotham Central, and everything. I love the Batcave.
Yeah, Batcave's amazing.
I think the Batcave looks absolutely great. It's so dark in places. I love it as well because you always do these things like who built the Death Star, who's building these Batcaves. Who's the guy building the CD player
Yeah, I knew you were going to
putting
say that.
and putting a bat symbol on it and thinking, I wonder who this is for?
Yeah, who is that for? And the fact that he uses a CD and then he scratches the CD, like that doesn't work. Oh, yeah, we can get to that in hates.
Yeah.
But I mean, I mentioned earlier about the cast, but it really is a movie where everyone's at their best. Like Stan Winston, his costume work on Penguin's amazing. The screenplay by Daniel Waters is amazing. He famously wrote Heathers, which is another fantastic film we haven't done. Elfman's score, Burton's director. You could argue this is like the peak of Burton. It's like, if you look at Burton, it's like he had this amazing run, which started with like Beetlejuice in 88, Batman 89, Edward Scissorhands 90, Batman Returns 92, Edward 94, Mars Attack 96, Sleepy Hollow 99. And then all of a sudden it goes off the rails in like 2001 with Planet of the Apes, and he just never quite recovered. There was a Corpse Bride in 05 and Frankenweenie in 2012, which were good. But he was in the middle of this unbelievable run, which kind of went, like I said, went off the rails once the 2000s came around. But I think this is maybe Tim Burton, arguably at the peak of his powers.
Hey, you've said all that, mind. We got to shout out friend of the pod, Bay Merch, who we interviewed because he did the Batman stuff, and he was part of the costume effects of Batman Returns. So we got to shout him out as well. Yeah,
of course. So everybody was just slaying on this film, basically. In terms of hates, I already mentioned the finale falls a little bit flat, which is a bit of a shame. Number two, one of my more existential choices, should we say, but the fact that this led to Batman Forever rather than Tim Burton's third Batman movie still upsets me to this day. I was going to say Vicky Vale being abandoned, but I think they actually deal with it pretty well. So I'm going to go and jump in with the Batboat is just not a Batwing, basically. It's just not as good. Although one other thing, and I wouldn't force it into the film because, I think Charles is probably long enough. But if they were going to do, because they were talking about doing a spin-off with Catwoman, you get a few hints at this kind of like Gollum Smeagol situation where she's like talking into a reflection in the mirror. And it only gets hinted at a couple of times. But whenever she does or has these moments, like she's breaking down and she doesn't know the person she is, Michelle Pfeiffer is fantastic in those scenes. And I would have liked a bit more of that, of like Selena Kyle kind of struggling with the person that she's become. So, again, more of an issue that there wasn't the spin-off that they promised. So, again, another one of those existential ones more than anything, perhaps. But yeah, those are my hates.
I got to go with the introduction of the Batboat as well. It's on Bat Hover, whatever the thing was.
It's just not good.
It didn't feel right for me. As much as I love the Batcave, big pet peeve of mine was when he did his final suit up. He moved all of the same bat costumes to get the fifth one. They're the same fucking bat suits.
It's weird. It's an oddly. I wasn't sure with that setup scene if they were trying to make it look cool or were trying to play it as a joke. Because he goes in, he sees the suits, and he picks one off a hanger. And even when he walks back out, he has to kind of like awkwardly walk around the other suits, and then he stands there looking cool. But I was like, everything before that was kind of clumsy, so I couldn't quite tell if they were playing that sequence for laughs or if it was supposed to be cool. Maybe a bit of both. I don't know, but yeah, strange one.
It took me out. And you're going to call this a Rob one. The one
CD player again, is it?
No. When they turned that fantastic Batmobile into the Bat Dildo.
Oh yeah, no, you are right. It doesn't look great.
No, it looks
awkward.
When they shot all the sides off, and I argue, who's picking these sides up and taking them back to Batman?
Yeah, it's strange. They're just in the street. And the other end of that spectrum, and it is a tick in the box for the Tumblr, is what they did in Batman Returns. You think when he ends up on like the Bat bike, it's so cool. Like that Bat bike is unbelievable. This is that movie's equivalent. And as you say, it kind of looks like a Bat dildo. There's no escaping it. And it doesn't look like it works on wheels. It's clumsy.
I mean, the sex industry, if they're going to release a Batman themed dildo, That's has to have wings at the end of it like this did.
and a wheel and wheels.
and wheels. And that
I'm not gonna lie, it's not built for comfort, it's more of an aesthetic thing. But
and that weird pointy nose cone at the end.
Yeah. I'm not a woman. I don't know if that's gonna work, but yes, it does fundamentally and sadly look like a dildo on wheels. So I totally.
The only person using that is weird Batman fans who enjoy pegging. That's where I'm going with that one.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Any odd titles for this film?
There's a couple all around the like the Batman Returns-esque thing. So let me get to the top. I say that, and then the first. So Austria had Batman's Return, but as a comma.
Batman's Return. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, randomly. Belgium,
Batman
Batman.
Returns, Batman's Return. Okay, yeah, fair enough. I don't know why that's kind of stumped me a
Yeah.
little bit, but sure, let's go for it.
Belgium, Batman 2, The Challenge.
No, don't like it.
No. Croatia, Batman is back.
That's terrible.
Yep. The Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, The Return of Batman.
For some odd reason, I thought that was the title of the film. Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, Batman Returns. Okay, fair enough.
No, it's The Return of Batman.
Mm-hmm.
Finland, you have Batman: The Return.
Mm-hmm. Well, Federal Republic of Yugoslavia at the time would have been a dictatorship. So if he wanted to call it the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, Batman Returns, I guess he could have pulled it off. I suppose. Sorry, don't want to derail things.
Italy, Batman Rises.
That's fine. Yeah, obviously.
Lithuania, Batman's Collapse.
No, doesn't make any sense.
Serbia, The Return of Batman. Taiwan, Batman Shows His Might.
Oh my god, sounds like a He-Man cartoon. Terrible stuff.
That's
the only
it.
one I really like is Batman's Return, which feels more complex than it actually is. But yeah, we'll go with that one.
That's it. That's all we got.
Any facts?
We do have facts. Danny DeVito remained in character between takes.
Yeah, I heard about that. That must have been fucking tiring for everyone. For him to be such an asshole on set the whole time. God damn it.
At least 50% of the Warner Brothers lot was taken up with Gotham City set, which is funny when, as you said, 90% of this film was in Gotham City Square.
Yeah, but I mean, those are massive sets. Like, again, I mentioned that Art Deco Gothic design. Like, the sets look ginormous. This feels like an old-fashioned film in the best possible way. And it adds to that timelessness, I think.
I don't think they'll be doing this now, this day and age. The production wanted to use king penguins, but the only tame ones in captivity were at a bird sanctuary in the Cotswolds, deep in the English countryside. So the birds were flown over to the States in the refrigerated hold of a plane. They were given their own refrigerated trailer and swimming pool with half a ton of fresh ice every day and had fresh fish delivered daily straight from the docks. Even though the temperature outside frequently topped 100 degrees, the entire set was refrigerated down to 35 degrees. The birds also had an around-the-clock bodyguard. The birds clearly enjoyed the experience, as following their stint in Hollywood, most of them had mated and produced eggs, the sure sign of a content penguin.
Well, yeah, it must be an interesting, being a penguin, having to live under certain circumstances. Like, dude, there's no way we're going to LA. It's too fucking hot. We're not going. But somebody has set it up for us perfectly. So, listen, if we're going to have babies in LA and come back and tell a story, we have to do it now. So, I love the fact that that's it. It's like, how do you know these, when Peter, because I think, is it Peter, the animal activist spoke?
Yeah.
He did get involved. But, the argument would have come back. It's like, dude, look at all these penguins fucking. They're clearly content. There's no greater sign of penguin contentment than penguin sex. So, yeah, everyone's fine.
Danny DeVito was advised by friend Jack Nicholson, aware of his own financial success with Batman, to take the role of the Penguin.
Yeah, good.
And I really want to do a Jack Nicholson impression now. Having a phone call with Danny DeVito, but it's not going to work.
Oh, yeah, that's a taxing one, that is. I'm not going for that one.
What else have we got here? The massive Gotham City sets were all constructed to be mobile and were often shifted between days of filming. Michelle Pfeiffer routinely got lost on her way to filming each day.
Amazing. Yeah, the filming on this was like notoriously long as well. So many moving parts. Literally and figuratively, of course.
Several modifications were made to the Batsuit, including the color scheme and chest plate logo. At the request of Michael Keaton, a zipper was also added to the pants.
Wise choice.
I mean, what do you want me to do if I take a piss? Just piss my rubber suit?
Yeah, you don't want to be doing
that.
Oh,
can you imagine that sloshing about?
Yeah, it'd be better than if it was cloth. It's not going to show at least. But yeah. I actually think I prefer the 89 suit from a purely aesthetic standpoint. But this one does make a bit more sense. But even at the end, when he just wants to take off his cowl, he literally tears it off. That's the only way. It's not built for common sense, that suit.
That's why he's got 900 bat suits, because they only got one use out of them all.
Every time he wants to take the cowl off, he's got to tear it off his feet. Yeah, bizarre.
This one is for you, because I would have thought you would have brought this up already. Batman doesn't wear boots in the movie. They're Air Jordan 6s connected to an upper, which give the boot-like feeling.
Oh, see, the first one was Reeboks, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think.
Yeah. So I think they're Reebok high tops, or maybe Reebok pumps in the first film, and they were basically restructured. I didn't know in this film that they were Air Jordans, like because in the film you do see the boots up close when he goes into his bat closet,
Yeah.
but they look more specifically designed for this. So I didn't think they were based on a trainer. I didn't know.
Two more for you around Michelle Pfeiffer, and then we can call it a day.
Mm-hmm.
Annette Bening was cast as Catwoman, but was replaced by Michelle Pfeiffer when she became pregnant. Pfeiffer's $3 million salary was $2 million more than was offered to Bening.
Well, yeah, because she was so much more famous. All right, don't get me wrong. Michelle Pfeiffer was perfect for the role. They made the right choice eventually to pay the extra. Annette Bening, you can see why they would have gone for her. She does have that feline kind of thing going on.
Yeah.
But if ever, you just can't imagine anyone else. Like, there have been other Catwomen and they've been fine, but no one's come close. Like, when you think of Catwoman, and some people will be, I prefer the one from the 60s. It's bullshit. Catwoman is Michelle Pfeiffer. Like, with Batman, a lot of people have a different Batman. Some people some people prefer Christian Bale, some people prefer Michael Keaton, some people prefer Batfleck. And to be honest, I understand each of them to one extent or another because they're all successful in their own way. I don't think they've actually cast a bad Batman. Even George Clooney wasn't necessarily bad. He was just in a dog shit movie. But with Catwoman, it's Michelle Pfeiffer. Forget about it.
Last one then. The catsuit was so tight on Michelle Pfeiffer that she often had trouble hearing her own voice. Tim Burton had to tell her to lower her voice register because she would often shout her dialogue instead of just saying it.
Which would have been, again, one of my other favorite sequences. And it brings back to one of your points where she's just always falling. When she falls into the glass house.
Yeah, and
she just loses it and just screams and it all just bursts. I love that scene. Amazing.
I just picture the costume designers now just with a foot on her back and just pulling a catsuit around her. Daymerch, yeah.
Yeah, maybe it was Daymerch, yeah.
Just had her on the floor, just a boot in her back and just...
Yeah, just putting the suit. You're getting into this goddamn suit. Give me more talcum powder, for the love of God. Any more facts?
The talcum powder and the lotion have turned into a paste.
You got the tone bang on there as well.
Right, that's it. We can move on.
Legacy, without question, the weirdest Batman movie. Maybe one of the weirdest mainstream sequels of all time. I think it's in the conversation. The best cast Batman movie, I think, is this versus The Dark Knight, is the only one that comes close in terms of, they really did nail the casting with that film. Because I really like, Two-Face, everyone in that film, but I would still maybe have Batman Returns just ahead, despite the fact that Heath Ledger does bump everything up because he's so good as the Joker. He's like... But even then, he's got competition with Jack Nicholson. I don't think Michelle Pfeiffer has any competition. But hey ho,
you wouldn't put Lenny Kravitz's daughter up there?
No, not even close. She's good in that film.
Zoe Kravitz. Sorry, I'm doing her disservice. Zoe Kravitz, yeah.
But maybe it's because that film is more grounded in its own way. It's just not anywhere near as iconic. And she's good for that film. Like she is good for that. In the same way, it's like Heath Ledger's fantastic for Nolan's Batman in the same way that Jack Nicholson's perfect for Tim Burton's Batman, for instance. She's great in that film, but she's nowhere near as iconic or memorable as Michelle Pfeiffer. And as I said, that's nothing else to her performance. I think it's the role. It's not just the performance. It's the role. It's the aesthetic, everything that comes with it.
Yeah.
We've already talked about Keaton potentially being the best Batman. I know you mentioned it was seen as a bit of a disappointment. I mean, but if you look at just the sheer numbers and adjusted for inflation, it was still a big hit. It's just comparative.
It broke a record, didn't it? Because it earned the most money in 3 days of release.
Yeah, it was absolutely massive out of the gate. It had a bigger opening weekend than Batman 89, but it didn't have the same legs, and it's probably down to the weirdness. Like, this wouldn't have been for everyone. As much as a lot of people adore this film, you can imagine for a mainstream audience, some people would have gone in to see this film and been like, this is a bit fucking strange. It doesn't have the same core appeal as the original Batman. And as I said, the difference is the first Batman was cool. This one is weird. And I'm not saying, that in a bad way, but cool is easier to sell than weird. There's just no two ways about it. The fact that it sadly led to Batman Forever and the terrible Schumacher movies. I know some people have a soft spot for Batman Forever. I'll always remember it because the soundtrack, and again, I actually quite like Val Kilmer as Bruce Wayne. But I've gone back and tried to rewatch Batman Forever. It's a bad film. Everyone's chewing the scene far too much.
Yeah, it's not a good film. The only thing I can give you that positive about that film is the Robin suit, because it's a red version of the Nightwing suit, and Nightwing is one of my favorite characters. The only time I'm ever going to see that suit on the big screen, I feel. is.
Well, they were going to
Batman
have
Forever.
Robin in this, but again,
Oh
Robin's
no,
a
not Robin.
weird
I want
character.
Nightwing.
Yeah,
I want a
yeah.
Nightwing film, a Nightwing character.
Nightwing, I'd be more, but he is inherently linked to Robin because where the character comes from.
Yeah.
But Robin to me always feels like an odd character because the whole idea is like Batman's supposed to be a loner. So to me at least, I've never warmed to any of the Robins because I just don't think it makes sense. And like, is another one of the issues with the Schumacher.
If you think
films
about
which
it in a dark thing, it makes sense because Batman dresses in black so nobody can see him coming. So
you're
dresses...
thinking about this is all going a little bit Catholic priest thing.
No, not that. He dresses his sidekick in bright colors so he can be the target whilst Batman sneaks up behind him.
I see what you mean. I thought I thought it was going to get a little bit darker than that.
No, I wasn't going creepy. I was going the fact that he's
enough.
using them as cannon fodder. That's why he has so many Batmans, so many Robins.
So many Robins, yeah, that does actually. I'd never thought about it that way. All of a sudden, like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Just let Robin die. Interesting that this movie's legacy, we mentioned it earlier, to an extent is now intertwined with The Flash, which we have different opinions on this, but I think despite its faults, is actually pretty good. And Keaton, if nothing else, I think is absolutely fantastic in that film. I think if you remove like some of the dodgy CG is a problem, but if you can get over that, I think there's a lot to like about The Flash. And a big part of that is the stuff with Michael Keaton's Batman, because I think he looks fantastic in it. What else I was going to say? The score, we've mentioned it a bunch of times, and we did. I won't go into it in too much detail because we talked about the fact that it's got the Zimmer score and the Elfman score, but to this day, the Elfman score is the de facto Batman score, in the same way as great as Zimmer's score is for Man of Steel, which I absolutely adore. Just to be clear, it'll always be the Williams score as the de facto Superman score. So I think that's another big part of this film. You could argue that the suit is maybe the best bat suit. I put it between this and 89, and we've talked about some of the other ones. The Batmobile and Batwing remain the best in class. I forgot that the Batwing's not actually in this, so it's a bummer that we have the Batboat. Yeah. And this one had a bunch of great toys. I actually had the penguins with the rockets on their backs. So great toy line. But this was when they were really pushing, especially coming off 89, which turned into this cultural phenomenon. Like, I know the box office was big and films have been bigger since, but it really was a phenomenon, the whole thing, because there just hadn't been anything like it at the time.
Do you remember those toys when you were a kid, those alien egg things? And if you got two of them and put them together, apparently, and put them in the freezer, apparently the rumor was they would have babies.
Jesus Christ. The toys we had as kids, unbelievable.
Yeah. So do you remember? So I'm wondering, after we read that trivia, if you had two of those penguin toys and they were happy, would they end up with
another baby cute one? Oh, who knows? But yeah, the toys are great, and obviously everybody wanted the Batmobile again because it's still the bomb. In terms of video games, it's a weird one, this one, because we've talked about a bunch of video games on this podcast, going back to an era when you'd get a bunch of different versions of the same video game. So this one there's a Sega version, and even amongst that, there's two different. So there's the Mega Drive version and a Sega CD version, which are basically the same, but not the same. The CD version had extra 3D driving sections bolted on. Then on top of that, there's a Master System and Game Gear versions, which again are similar, but not quite the same. There's an Amiga version, which was pants and it was actually played with controversy. It was initially sold and promoted as being the same as the PC version, which was a completely different game again by Konami. That was more of an adventure game. But the Amiga version was actually a really buggy and poorly made side scroller. So they were selling it as being the same as the PC version, despite the fact that it was not like it at all. So there's the Amiga version, the PC version, you could argue 4 different Sega versions. There was a NES version by Konami that was very different to the PC version, which had a really good soundtrack, but was otherwise bang average. And there was a SNES version as well, which was also made by Konami, but was miles ahead of not only the NES games, but all the other ones. And
that's the one I remembered, the SNES. I had the SNES Batman Returns.
That was the best one, because all the other games were either adventure games or side-scrolling games. That was more of a beat-em-up game, and that actually made it onto the list of a few top 100 SNES games of all time. So it's actually, outside of the Rocksteady games, one of the best Batman games. So yeah, there's fucking 9 different versions of Batman Returns. Absolutely insane. If we're going to have a Batman Returns game now, to bring it back to Rocksteady, that is the easy answer. It's we don't want fucking just kill the Justice League and the Suicide Squad.
It's Arkham City.
It's 100% Arkham City with a skin change. You base it on Tim Burton's Gotham. You have Michael Keaton reprising his role. You have him doing the iconic Batsuits. You have, like in Arkham Knight, you bring the Batmobile in, not the Bat Tank. People always forget because Arkham Knight is one of the most underrated video games of all time. Everyone got caught up on the Bat Tank stuff. The Bat Tank stuff wasn't great. Everyone forgot that the rest of that game was fucking phenomenal. I think it's the best one.
I would go
it's
Arkham
close.
City.
It's the close.
I would go Arkham City, but Arkham Knight is leaps and bounds ahead of the original Arkham Asylum.
It's ahead of most open world games. Like if you go back to it now, it's all
I did not so long ago. It's fucking fantastic to play.
The stuff where he's losing his mind and you suddenly start seeing the Joker in the background, the way Man Bat jumps in out of nowhere, it feels like this really organic open world. And you go back and play it now, like what was it? What was the one that came out recently? The one with the four of them, with Robin and Batgirl and stuff like that.
Gotham Knights. Oh, it's terrible.
Not only is that game terrible, aesthetically, it just doesn't look as good. Like that game looks amazing. And to this day, when you're flying to the rooftops of Gotham and you fly down directly into your Batmobile and it plays like fucking Burnout, I'm like, dude, you do that with Tim Burton's Batman? Oh my fucking days. It's the only answer. It's the only answer.
There you go. So take Arkham City, add the drive-in from Arkham Knight and make it look like Burton, and you've got a Batman Returns game. I think we're both agreeing on that.
Bring back the voice cast. Bring back Michelle Pfeiffer's as Catwoman. You know, modern day video games, you can afford these things. Especially, everyone would have a boner for that. I mean, some people would be like, "Oh, why isn't it just they've done the Arkham universe? Just do the Tim Burton one. That'd just be the best." So yeah, that's it. Scores and recommendations. Do you want to go first?
Have we not done making a change?
Oh, making a change. Jesus Christ, I totally forgot to list that. Okay, mine would be. The easy thing is I would have more of that Smeagol Gollum thing. So basically, I just want more Catwoman in this film because not only do I think, Michelle Pfeiffer, obviously she's lovely to look at, but I genuinely think, jokes aside, it's an unbelievable performance. And there's just a few moments I'm like, just let her cook for a little bit longer. Let's have a bit more, even just if it's just more of her and Michael Keaton, because he's at his best when he's struggling with the whole Bruce Wayne Batman thing. He's that kind of actor. So I would like a bit more of that in the film. But again, it comes back to there's just not enough time. There's too many characters. So that'd be my make a change.
Okay, so I got two. The first one, of course, is the joke version. Where
I know. You see with such confidence, I got two. Like usually the idea is make a change. You can only make one change. We usually sneak in another one, but you've come out straight out of the gate. I'm giving you two. I'm giving you fucking two. That's all I'm giving you two.
Because the first one's the joke version. I would have more of a story about the guy that sells fruit and veg at these talks, because that guy must be minted in Gotham City.
I mean, in fairness, Penguin does like, who the hell brings all these fucking tomatoes? That's not verbatim, by the way, but it's
they're whole heads of lettuce and eggs and tomatoes,
and they're all happy to be there. Like nobody's going there expecting to be upset. Everyone's going there to support the Penguin. So they bring in that stuff as like just in case it goes off. I want to have a full head of lettuce.
I think it's one guy coming from the outskirts of Gotham where the farms are, just going to sell his wares in the big city, and he just randomly came across a press conference one day.
It could be like like an ice cream van. Like as soon as the sun comes out, like a dude just rocks up with his ice cream van. Like in Scotland, even if it's cold, he'll still rock up with his blue skies. It's kind of like if there's any big event, he just rolls the dice. He rolls up with his car, his little truck, and he's just like, listen, just in case things don't go the way you want to, here's my wares, tomatoes and lettuce to throw at people. Bizarre.
But the actual version would be, I guess, more, I don't know, it's really weird. I wanted more, not drama, but change, what's the word, emotion from a lot of these scenes, like the scene where the kid gets kidnapped, the mayor's baby. Nobody seems bothered. Even when Penguin gives the baby back to the mayor, the first thing he does is go, there you go, wife, or maybe babysitter or whatever, take this kid away. Like there just doesn't seem to be any emotion in these films when it's needed.
Again, I think that comes back to this whole idea that there is this emotional artifice with this film where it's like the rest of the world almost doesn't matter. And Tim Burton's only interested in getting into the heads of his key characters. And he knows he hasn't got enough time for these things, for there to be a real world around him. Like even Gotham, as great as it is, it feels small because everyone feels like they live next door to each other because we can't have traveling. Everyone just needs to be in the right place at the right time and balls to common sense. So it is one of the prices you pay for that directorial style, and I think it is worth paying, but I totally understand where you're coming from.
Yep. So that's my mega change. So we can get on to scores and recommendations. I'll give you mine straight away if you want.
Yeah, go for it.
So I had a lot of fun with this film. It is definitely a 3. I think we gave the last one a 3 or a 4. I can't really remember. It's
3.
Yeah,
I didn't. I did not give Batman 89 a 3. I can say that much right now. I would,
no,
would have been
I
would
think I
have been
gave Batman 89 a 3, and I think even though I think
really.
this is
I'm
better,
surprised.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's still so- anyway, I think it's a 3. I think there's things that need to happen with it, but I really enjoyed this film, so it's
Mhm.
it's a middle for me. And
Okay.
yeah, I would recommend it. In regards to Batman,
Mhm.
it's a really good Batman film. It's probably one of the better ones that we've
Mhm.
had. So, especially of the old guard ones before you get the Nolans and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
it's easily the best of the original, what, 4 films? Because you know,
right,
back in the day, you used to
you've
get
got me
like,
questioning myself now. So I'm going to go 3.5. It's a 3.5,
yeah, I was
and I would
surprised
recommend it.
based on the conversation we had. I mean, you know, each their own. Go for what you want, but like 3 stars, like, oh, that feels a little bit, you know, middling for like me. For it's even though I don't like it as much as 89, and I do think it has more problems. Like the highs are so high with this film. It's
Yeah.
comfortably a 4 star. I mean, I could push to a 4.5, but I will comfortably go with 4 because, as I said, I think the final act falls a little bit flat, despite the fact that it's thematically so interesting. And as I said, I don't think it's ever quite the sum of its individual parts. But make no mistake, those individual parts are some of the best you'll find in any
Yeah.
Batman films. And you know, I almost couldn't give it less than a 4 when you've got 4 actors who are all so utterly fantastic. And as I mentioned, Tim Burton, his directorial style, the aesthetic, all that other nonsense. So even though it's not my favorite Batman film, if I was going to like rate this, I mean, The Dark Knight is probably still the best one, despite the fact I'm not as warm on the final act again. 89 would be second for me. This would be kind of like joint third alongside Batman Begins, probably. But yeah, it's really easy to recommend. It's weird as shit, totally unique, and loads of fun, despite having a couple of
Yeah.
problems. So yeah, 4 stars for me.
So I actually forgot to say here at the beginning, this was our second film in our Christmas season. I think we're calling it Hugmas.
Well, this is a
So
proper Christmas film. I mean, right down to the fact the final line is
yeah,
"Merry Christmas to all," you know, and goodwill to all men and women. It's like
and you've
just
got
just in case you had any doubt, it's Christmassy as
the
fuck.
biggest Christmas tree that you've ever seen in film.
Well, yeah, there's the one
Yeah.
in Gotham Square, and then the one in his house is
Yeah.
outrageously. I know he lives in Wayne Manor, but it's huge. Like there's a
Who's
whole
decorating
sequence.
that? Like
Well,
Alfred needs to be putting up a
Alfred's
fucking
behind him. He is
yeah,
using a ladder.
doing about. He needs scaffolding for the top. Like it's
Oh,
ridiculous.
dude, it's such like, you know, people talk about, oh, is Die Hard a Christmas film, which it is, and we talked about Christmas, you know, whatever. But this is more of a Christmas film than Die Hard.
Yeah.
This is unapologetically a Christmas film for sure.
I can't wait, right, for me to do the one that we do with Dave, the Christmas, like the actual Christmas release one,
Oh
because
yeah.
the film that I've got for that, I think is I'm gonna have fun with, but I'm not telling you what it is because
And that's
it's
a
not my
proper Christmas film, isn't it? Like we've talked about the difference between, you know, Die Hard's Christmas film, but I think I'm not sure if you necessarily agree, but I've come down the idea that it's Christmas adjacent in so much that
Yeah.
it is a Christmas film, but you could also watch it in April. And if you
Yeah.
took the Christmas out of it, if it was a Thanksgiving film instead of Christmas, it'd fundamentally be the same film. Same film. This is arguably closer to a Christmas film because it's so intertwined into the story. I'd say it's more of a Christmas film than Die Hard. It's still on the Christmas adjacent end of the spectrum because you could watch this in April. I think you could still enjoy Batman Returns.
Yeah.
However, my choice for next week, there are only 2 times of the year you can watch it, and it's the movie that straddles 2 of the key holiday seasons of the year, and it's Halloween and Christmas. And I'm amazed we haven't done it beforehand. But
Are we sticking with Tim Burton by any chance?
we are sticking. Although, again, maybe the most famous example of, you know, people think, oh, it's a Tim Burton film. No. It was created by Tim Burton. It's not directed by Tim Burton. He didn't have the time for it because he was making this and he went straight into something else, which I can't remember off the top of my head.
Beetlejuice.
But, yeah, Beetlejuice was 88. This was 90. Yeah, so 92.
Oh.
This was made in 91, going into 92. Ed Wood, that was the other film he was making.
Oh,
at this
okay.
time. And then, yeah. So anyway, so he's making Ed Wood, but yeah, The Nightmare Before Christmas, which is going to be an interesting one because I liked that film as a kid. I have grown to absolutely adore it as an adult, and I've been listening to the soundtrack loads recently, and I'm like, there's so many good songs, and I'm terrified that you're going to hate this film because it's such a charming, such an aesthetically wonderful film. We'll obviously talk about next week whether this really is a Christmas film or a Halloween film. I'd argue it works as both. As to which, if you know, the big question is if you had to force it into a pocket. But we'll talk about that next week. But yeah, I think you can live pretty happy in the knowledge that I'm going to like this film, even though I haven't seen it for a while. Rob's going to be the interesting one, so I'm hoping that I'll go back with new eyes and enjoy this film. But because as I said, make no mistake, as a kid, I was slightly indifferent towards this film when I was younger. And I've watched it a few times since. And every time I've watched it, I've liked it more and more. So, we'll see. We'll see next week.
I'm not going to tell you my thoughts. I'm not going to tell you. Usually I say, I'm looking forward to this one. I'm not looking forward to this one. I've seen this, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to tell you anything. I'm just going to let you sit and wait until next week.
That's part of the joy. That's part of the joy. There is no guarantee whatsoever that Rob is going to like this film. But there is a chance maybe you'll go back and watch it and absolutely adore it. We'll find out. If that's
30.
Not, what's that?
It's 30 fucking years old.
It's 31 years old. It's
1993 it was released.
I thought it was 92. Oh, no, it is 93. Sorry, I'm thinking about when it was being made because this was 91 going into 92. That was 92, 93. Yeah. So, it was a 93 film. So, 30 years. 30 motherfucking years.
Hell.
Again, one thing I don't like about doing this podcast is the maths it makes me do. And every time I do maths, I get upset. And this is another example. So, yes, 30-year-old, fucking hell. But then, right, 30-year-olds for this, you telling me that this is 30 years old or Batman Returns is 31 years old. That is upsetting, but it does feel like a lifetime ago. It's when you tell me that Elf is 20 years ago. That's the one that hurts my heart.
Yeah.
Because that feels much more, and I know, yes, that's 10 years more recent, but that still to me feels like a genuinely, relatively recent film, whereas these films don't. They feel
that's
like
the same with
films
Bad
from
Santa,
my
because
kids.
Bad Santa was 2003 as well, so that's 20
2004.
years old.
That's 29 years old.
No,
yeah. Sorry, 19 years old. Oh, Bad
2003.
Santa.
Yeah.
I thought it was 2004. Sorry.
No, released the same year.
Oh, well, there we go. So, that's upsetting as well, even older than I thought. But yes, so next week, Nightmare Before Christmas. So come back to hear me sing its praises, and Rob will fucking find out next week. But this has been Batman. Next week, Nightmare Before Christmas. I think these have been pretty solid Christmas choices so far. We'll see.
Yeah, until my my third one, my second one choice.
Yeah, I think that's going to be an interesting one.
I can't wait for my choice.
Anything else before we wrap up?
Nothing from me, mates, except I am looking forward to watching it. That's all I'll give you.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be good. Yeah. Okay, I've been Liam. This has been Rob. You've been listening to Hey Guys podcast, and we'll see you next week. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.
Oh, and before I forget, where can folk reach us if they were so inclined to?
Well, you can actually reach us on Hey You Guys 80s at Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. But if you want to send us a mail, do heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Send us in your recommendations. Send us in your thoughts about any of the episodes. Just literally talk to us. We'll have a one-sided talk with you on the podcast.
Yeah. We're nice folk. Get in touch. But no, cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.